So I want you to imagine walking around every single day carrying this invisible backpack.
Oh boy, I know where this is going.
Right. Like every time you have a passing thought, you pick up a jagged rock and just toss it in. Something super mundane like, I need to buy almond milk.
Or something heavy, like I owe the executive team that quarterly strategy report by Friday.
Exactly. Or even one of those aspirational things, like I really should learn conversational Spanish before I turn 40. Bam! Another rock in the backpack.
And you do this, what, dozens, maybe hundreds of times a single day?
Totally. And the weight of it just compounds the longer you carry it. You don't just toss the rock in and forget about it.
No, you definitely don't. Your brain actually refuses to let you forget about it.
Yeah. You feel this physical and psychological pull of that weight while you're trying to fall asleep. Or, while you're supposedly present playing with your kids.
Or relaxing on a Sunday afternoon reading a book. There's just this constant background radiation of unmade decisions. It's always there.
It's just an entirely exhausting way to exist. And man, it's how almost all of us operate by default right now.
Yeah, we basically live in a state of continuous partial attention.
But I want you to really think about what it would actually feel like to, take off that backpack completely. What if you could dedicate 100% of your cognitive bandwidth to the exact task in front of you?
Completely free from those nagging, low-level anxieties humming in the back of your mind.
Right. So our mission for today's deep dive is to rescue you from that crushing weight of information overload. We really want to free you from the tyranny of the never-ending to-do list.
And to do that, we're breaking down David Allen's foundational productivity methodology, often known as getting things done.
We're focusing heavily on workflow mastery and how to naturally plan your projects. We want to hand you a completely new paradigm for managing your daily life.
It's basically a systematic, airtight way to capture all the chaotic stuff commanding your attention so you can finally operate with a clear head.
Okay, so let's get into it. The core shift here, right at the very heart of this methodology, requires abandoning a deeply ingrained habit.
Oh, totally. For decades, the corporate and self-help worlds have preached that the solution to feeling overwhelmed is better time management. Or, better information management.
Right, but the flaw in that thinking is structural. You cannot actually manage time.
Exactly. I mean, a minute is a minute. It passes regardless of what you do.
Yeah, and you definitely cannot manage information in the modern era. The volume of information is just, it's infinite.
So the fundamental radical shift we're exploring today is moving away from the illusion of managing time and instead moving toward the concrete reality of managing action.
Managing action. I mean, that sounds deceptively simple. But before we rebuild your system, we need to dissect why the old tools you're probably using right now are failing.
You mean the rigid daily to-do lists and strictly blocked out calendars?
Yes, exactly those.
Yeah.
Why are they failing so spectacularly? Why is the baseline state of the modern professional just pure, unadulterated stress?
Well, to understand the stress, we really have to look at the structural nature of our jobs. Peter Drucker, the management consultant, coined the term knowledge work.
Right, and distinguishing that from industrial work is super crucial here.
It is. Because in the industrial age, work was entirely self-evident. The visual cue of the work was the work itself.
Like if you were a farmer, your job was plowing the fields.
Exactly. You stood on your porch, you looked at the unplowed dirt, and you knew exactly what to do. You plowed until you hit the fence line, and then the work was definitively finished.
Or, on an assembly line. The widget came down the belt, you attached the bolt, and the work moved on.
The boundaries of completion were physical. They were visible, and they were undeniable.
There were clear edges. You didn't go home, lie awake in bed, and wonder if the dirt could have been plowed 15% more synergistically.
No, exactly. The dirt was plowed or it wasn't. But look at the landscape of knowledge work today.
Yeah.
For most of us listening, there are no clear edges to our projects. Consider the actual deliverables in a modern office.
Right, like how good can a marketing conference be? How inspiring can an internal memo be?
Or how streamlined can a corporate compensation package be? The answer to all those questions is infinite.
Because there are no physical boundaries, right? So the work is never truly unequivocally done.
Exactly. There's always another data point on the internet, another expert opinion, or, some new software tool that could make whatever you're working on incrementally better.
And it goes even deeper than just the blurry edges of individual projects. Our actual jobs, our overarching roles keep morphing.
Oh, constantly.
We operate in this state of constant morph mode. Organizations are endlessly pivoting.
Yeah. changing quarterly goals, acquiring new partners, adopting new AI technologies, restructuring entire departments.
I seriously doubt anyone listening to this right now is doing only the specific tasks written in their original job description.
The modern professional is essentially functioning as a free agent within their own life and career.
We're expected to absorb massive, unending streams of data, emails, Slack messages, and market shifts, all while our fundamental responsibilities remain in a state of constant flux.
It's overwhelming just talking about it.
It is. But let me challenge something here, because the self-help industry has certainly recognized this chaos.
They have.
And their proposed solution is usually a retreat to philosophy. Like, we're told to define our big picture values, write personal mission statements, find our why.
Right, right.
The argument is that if you focus on your highest values, it acts as a filter to simplify your life and cut through the daily noise. Doesn't that philosophical grounding solve the overload problem?
Okay, so that is perhaps the most pervasive myth in modern productivity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the assumption is that clarifying your values simplifies your existence, but the psychological reality is the exact opposite.
Wait, how does clarity create complexity? That seems totally backward.
Let's play it out. Imagine a seasoned human resources executive who feels completely overwhelmed. She goes to a weekend retreat, does the deep work, and decides her absolute core value is to fundamentally elevate the quality of work life in her company. She wants to attract and retain elite talent.
Sounds like a great realization.
It is. But she comes back to the office on Monday. Does her day-to-day life suddenly feel simpler? Absolutely not. She has just significantly raised the bar for success.
Oh, wow. I see where you're going.
By defining a high standard, she instantly becomes hyper-aware of every single thing in her organization that currently fails to meet that standard.
The toxic manager in accounting, the terrible parental leave policy, the outdated break room.
Exactly. Things she might have previously ignored now actively demand her attention. Clarifying values creates a much larger inventory of things you want to change.
Which translates directly into more work, more projects, and just more open loops.
Precisely. Your values are actually generating the massive, crushing to-do lists that you are struggling to manage.
That is a staggering realization. And to make matters worse, the traditional tools we use to attack those massive lists are practically ancient.
Totally. Think about the classic ABC priority coding system on a daily to-do list.
Oh man, yeah. You write down 10 things, label the critical ones A, the medium ones B, and the trivial ones C.
That ABC model is a perfect example of an industrial age tool failing in a knowledge work environment. It assumes a static reality.
Right. It assumes you sit down with your coffee at 8 a.m.,
Mhm.
survey your landscape, and just logically deduce your A priorities for the next 8 hours.
But at 8:15 a.m., your most important client calls with an unforeseen crisis.
Oh!
Or your boss forwards an email from the CEO demanding immediate data on a project you hadn't even thought about.
And suddenly your predetermined A list is totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
And the worst part is, the fact that you aren't doing those A tasks makes you feel like you're failing, even though you are appropriately handling a real emergency.
You cannot use static tools to manage a dynamic, constantly shifting reality. Attempting to force a fluid workday into a rigid, predetermined sequence creates immense psychological friction.
So if the work is infinitely complex, and our values create more work, and the old scheduling tools snap in half the second a surprise happens, what are we even aiming for?
Good question.
What is the baseline state of mind we should be cultivating to navigate all this chaos without burning out?
Well, a powerful framework for this actually comes from the martial arts. In karate, practitioners strive for a state of being called mind like water.
Okay, I love this analogy. Picture a completely still pond. If you pick up a pebble and throw it into the center of that pond, how does the water respond?
It responds totally and completely appropriately to the force and mass of the input.
Exactly. It ripples exactly as much as it should, and then it seamlessly returns to a state of calm. It never overreacts and it never underreacts.
And the physical mechanics of a karate punch operate on that exact same principle. True power doesn't come from brute clenched muscle.
Right.
It comes from speed, relaxation, and a focused, explosive pop at the very end of the movement. A tense muscle is, physically speaking, a slow muscle.
So when we map this onto cognitive work, if your mind is tense, you are already operating at a massive deficit.
Yes. If you're overreacting to an unread industry magazine sitting on your desk, or underreacting to a critical email from the legal department, your environment is controlling you.
You've lost your center. It actually reminds me of the concept of swing in competitive rowing, which Craig Lambert writes about in his book, Mind Over Water.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Yeah, swing is this elusive, almost magical state in a boat where the friction just disappears. The rowers actually stop thrashing.
We stop striving and muscling the oars, right?
Exactly. They achieve this profound synchronization, where they just let the momentum of the shell carry them forward. They aren't trying to force the speed, they're relaxing into the technique.
Because speed comes from relaxation. That frictionless state of productive output is the ultimate goal here.
But achieving that frictionless state is literally impossible if your mind is cluttered with unresolved commitments.
Which, in this methodology, are called open loops or incompletes.
Right, we mentioned the invisible rocks in the backpack earlier. Let's define what an open loop actually is. It is anything, literally anything, pulling at your attention that doesn't currently belong where it is the way it is.
And it scales from the monumental to the incredibly mundane.
And world hunger is an open loop if you're actively committed to it but haven't figured out how. And replace the electric pencil sharpener in the home office is also an open loop.
If it is incomplete and it has a hold on your psyche, it's draining your energy, period.
The cognitive toll of these open loops becomes super clear when you look at how human memory actually functions.
Think of the short-term memory center of your brain, like the random access memory in a computer.
Yeah, RAM is designed for active processing, not long-term storage.
We've all experienced a computer with like 50 web browser tabs open simultaneously. The processor struggles, the cooling fan starts screaming, the cursor starts lagging.
And eventually the entire system crashes.
Exactly. Your brain's RAM has an astonishingly limited capacity for holding unresolved items.
When you force it to store dozens of unmade decisions, your focus fragments. You become reactive and constantly distracted.
The brain is a miraculous organ, obviously, but when it comes to managing these open loops, it is remarkably flawed.
There's this brilliant analogy involving a flashlight that illustrates just how counterproductive our mental RAM can be.
Oh, I love the flashlight analogy.
Say you have a flashlight sitting in a kitchen drawer and the batteries are totally dead. When does your brain actually serve up the reminder that you need to buy new batteries?
Only when the power goes out in a storm and you are standing in the pitch black holding a useless piece of metal.
Exactly. It never reminds you when you are actually walking down the battery aisle at the hardware store.
If the brain's internal reminder system were truly intelligent, it would only present information when you are in the specific geographic or temporal context to actually execute the action.
But instead, it functions like a malfunctioning alarm clock. It just randomly yells at you about untaken actions while you are driving or showering or trying to sleep.
Moments where you are completely physically powerless to do anything about the problem. And this mismatch generates a massive amount of free-floating anxiety.
The anxiety exists because a part of your psyche knows you have broken agreements with yourself.
Yes, and it doesn't trust your current system to resolve them. It keeps serving up the thought because it is terrified you're going to forget.
Okay, I want you, the listener, to test this out with a quick mental exercise right now. It takes less than 2 minutes, and it proves the profound connection between cognitive clarity and physical relaxation.
Ready. Think of the single project or situation in your professional or personal life that is bugging you the most right now. The one that feels the most in your face.
Hold it in your mind. Now do step 1. Describe the successful outcome of that project in one single declarative sentence.
What specifically needs to happen for you to mark this completely off your plate?
Maybe it's the Q3 marketing budget is approved by the finance committee, or the dispute with the car insurance company is fully resolved and the check is deposited.
Once you have that crystal clear picture of the finish line, move to step 2. Ask yourself, what is the very next physical action required to move that specific situation forward?
Not the next major milestone, the next physical action. If you had absolutely no other responsibilities in your life, and your only job was to advance this project today, where would you physically go and what visible action would you take?
Are you opening a laptop to draft a specific email? Are you picking up a phone to call a specific vendor? Are you driving to the hardware store to buy a specific type of nail?
Notice your physical state right now. For the vast majority of people, just doing that tiny sliver of focused thinking provides an immediate, palpable boost of control and relaxation.
Your shoulders might have dropped a millimeter. You can take a deeper breath.
But look at the reality here. The physical world hasn't changed one bit.
No. The car insurance company isn't being any more cooperative. The massive project still requires weeks of work.
The problem is exactly the same size it was 3 minutes ago. So why on earth do you feel better?
The relief comes because your mind has fundamentally shifted its relationship to the problem. You took this amorphous, threatening blob of anxiety and forced it through a cognitive filter.
By defining the intended outcome and the immediate next physical action, you made an executive decision.
The psychological tension releases not because the work is done, but because the work is defined. You have drawn the edges of the battlefield.
That is the core revelation. Defining the work clears the mental RAM.
But obviously, having an epiphany about one single project won't save you.
Right. Because we receive hundreds of emails, texts, Slack pings, and random ideas every single day. How do we systematically apply this cognitive filter to a constant avalanche of inputs?
This requires a framework, specifically the 5 stages of workflow mastery. To get control, we start with stage 1, collect, and stage 2, process.
Okay, let's break those down.
Stage 1, collect, is the absolute bedrock of the entire methodology. The non-negotiable prerequisite for achieving a mind like water is that you must have 100% capture of your open loops.
Every single incomplete must be extracted from your brain and placed into trusted external buckets.
And these buckets take many forms, right? A physical in-basket on your office desk, a structured notebook, a digital notes app on your phone, or your email inbox.
If we go back to the RAM analogy, think of playing a pinball machine.
Oh, I like this one.
Imagine stepping up to this beautiful, complex pinball table. You pull the plunger, send the silver ball flying, but then you realize there are gaping holes in the flippers and the board itself.
The balls just fall straight through onto the floor.
Exactly. How long are you going to keep playing that game? You lose motivation instantly.
If your collection system leaks, meaning you dutifully write down your meeting notes in an app, but you keep your grocery list and your anxiety about your mother's health solely in your head, your brain will recognize the system is fundamentally flawed.
It will flat out refuse to trust the external buckets. And it will take the job of remembering right back into its RAM. You'll start spinning your wheels again.
To prevent those leaks, there are 3 absolute success factors for the collection stage. First, you must get it all out of your head.
Sweeping your mind for every commitment, from fixing a squeaky door hinge to hiring a new VP of sales.
Second, you must minimize the number of collection buckets you use. If you have sticky notes on your monitor, an inbox on your desk, 3 different email accounts, a voice memo app, and a physical notebook,
You have way too many buckets. You will spend more energy managing the buckets than processing the information. You have to consolidate them.
and third, and most crucially, you must empty these buckets regularly.
Emptying the bucket is where people completely derail, which perfectly transitions us to stage 2, process.
Because in this methodology, emptying does not mean doing the work.
Let me repeat that, because it breaks everyone's brain. Processing your inbox is not doing the work in your inbox.
When people open their email, they see a message that requires 45 minutes of deep research to answer. Because they don't have 45 minutes right then, they mark it as unread and leave it in the inbox.
And the inbox just becomes a glorified, anxiety-inducing holding pen.
Processing is strictly about making executive decisions regarding the inputs. It is a triage process. When you process an item from your bucket, you push it through a very specific mental decision tree.
You take the top piece of paper or the top email, and you ask the first deceptively simple question. What is it?
People skip this step all the time. You look at an email from the HR department and your brain says, ugh, HR stuff.
That's not identifying what it is. Identifying it means acknowledging. This is an email from HR detailing the mandatory open enrollment dates for the new healthcare plan.
Once you have accurately identified the actual nature of the beast, you ask the golden binary question, is it actionable?
That binary question forces clarity. If the answer is NO, you only have 3 possible paths for that item.
Path 1. It's trash. It requires no action, and you will never need the information again. Delete it, shred it, throw it away.
Liberating. What's path 2?
Incubation. This means no action is required today, but you might want to engage with it in the future. This goes on to a someday maybe list.
Like a brochure for a vacation destination. Or into a tickler file that will automatically reappear in front of you on a specific date.
Exactly. And path 3 is reference material. The item requires no action, but it contains valuable information you might need later.
Like a menu for the local catering company, or a list of internal IT passwords. You file it away in a highly reliable, easily searchable system.
But let's look at the other side of the tree. What if the answer is yes? What if the item is actionable?
Then you are forced to ask, what is the specific next physical action? And this is where my own systems used to completely break down.
Really? How so?
Well, I would look at an input, say a note from a strategy meeting, and the action I would write down would be organize the annual industry conference.
Oh, no.
Right. And then that item would sit on my to-do list for 3 months, just taunting me, making me feel incredibly incompetent because I wasn't crossing it off.
You weren't crossing it off because organize the annual industry conference is not an action. It is a project.
The methodology provides a vital distinction here. A project is defined as any desired result that requires more than one action step to complete.
You cannot physically do a project. You can only do the individual action steps related to it. You don't do a conference. You draft an email to a keynote speaker. You call a catering company. You review a venue contract.
That distinction changes everything. It totally strips the intimidation factor away. So organized conference goes onto a dedicated projects list, which serves as an index of your current commitments.
But the next action, let's say it's draft email to keynote speaker asking for their fee structure, is what we process.
Once you have that single physical next action defined, you apply the rule of the 3Ds. Do it, delegate it, or defer it.
The first D, do it, is governed by the 2-minute rule. If the physical next action takes less than 2 minutes to complete, you must do it immediately, right there in the processing phase.
Do not write it down on a list. Do not file it, just execute it.
The logic is purely mathematical. It will take you more time and cognitive energy to catalog, track, and review a 2-minute action than it will to simply finish it and get it out of your life.
The 2-minute rule is a dopamine machine. It clears an astonishing amount of static from your daily life. Answering a quick question, approving a simple request, forwarding a document, boom, boom, boom.
They never even enter your tracking system, but obviously most important work takes longer than 120 seconds.
So if it violates the 2-minute rule, you move to the second D, delegate it. You ask, am I actually the most appropriate person to execute this action?
If you aren't, you assign it to the right person, send the email, and critically, you put a reminder on a dedicated waiting for list so you can track it.
Which brings us to the most common outcome. If the action takes longer than 2 minutes, and you are definitively the person who must execute it, you arrive at the third D.
Defer it. You defer the action by placing it into your trusted organizational system to be executed at a later, more appropriate time.
And here we hit the massive structural flaw in how most people operate. Where does all this deferred stuff go?
If you just leave it in your email inbox or put the paper back in your physical tray, you have completely failed.
You haven't processed anything. You've just stirred the pile around and familiarized yourself with your own backlog.
This is where we must move into stage 3, organize, and stage 4, review. This is where we build the actual engine of the trusted system.
Okay, let's build the engine. Stage 3, organize, is about creating clean, distinct categories for the results of your processing.
The physical and digital environments where these lists live must be sacred. Let's start with what the framework considers the most abused territory in personal workflow.
Oh, the calendar. Let's unpack the calendar, because traditional time management practically worships it as the ultimate daily to-do list.
We were all taught to block out every hour and write down the 5 major tasks we are going to accomplish on Tuesday.
But using your calendar as a daily to-do list is a guaranteed recipe for frustration. It is an aspirational document, not a reflection of reality.
Exactly. If you write 5 major tasks on Tuesday's calendar that you deeply hope to accomplish, but at 9 a.m. you get pulled into an unexpected 3-hour crisis management meeting,
those scheduled tasks do not get done. When you look at your calendar at 5 p.m., it stares back at you as a visual record of your failure.
You feel demoralized, and then you have to perform the tedious administrative task of rewriting those exact same items onto Wednesday's calendar.
After a few weeks of this, your brain learns that your calendar is basically a work of fiction. It stops trusting it, which means you stop looking at it.
So if the calendar is sacred, what actually earns the right to be placed on it? Only 3 very specific things belong on a calendar.
First, time-specific actions. This is your 2 p.m. dentist appointment or your 10 a.m. budget meeting. The action must happen at that exact time.
Second, day-specific actions. For example, you need to call a vendor on Friday because you know they are returning from vacation that morning. It doesn't matter what time on Friday, but it must be Friday.
And third, day-specific information. This isn't an action at all, but rather contextual data you need on a specific day, like a reminder that it's your assistant's birthday or that your parking pass expires.
That is it. If an item doesn't fit one of those 3 criteria, it never touches the calendar.
So if the vast majority of my deferred actions don't go on my calendar, Where do they live?
They live on next actions lists. And here is the genius structural pivot. You don't organize these actions by project, and you don't just dump them onto one massive scrolling list of 150 items.
You group your next actions lists by context.
Context grouping is an acknowledgement of physical reality. You create separate lists based on the tool, location, or person required to complete the action.
Right, you have an add computer list, a calls to make list, an errands list, an agendas list for things to discuss with your boss.
Think about why this is so powerful. Imagine you are standing in line at the grocery store. You have your phone and maybe 10 free minutes.
If you open a monolithic master to-do list, your brain has to scan past draft Q4 financial projections and clean the garage, things you literally cannot do in aisle 4.
That scanning causes major decision fatigue. But if you open your context-specific calls to make list, you only see actions you can execute right now with the tool in your hand.
You see, call the plumber for an estimate. You make the call. You cross it off. You match your action choices to the environment you are actually in, dramatically reducing the friction of starting.
Reducing friction is the entire point of the organization stage. We should also touch upon the non-actionable categories we mentioned during processing, because they require their own pristine organization.
Oh yeah. The someday maybe list is perhaps the most liberating list you can create. It acts as a parking lot for your imagination.
Capturing ideas like learn to play the cello, write a screenplay, or research buying a boat validates your creativity without cluttering up your active commitments.
It ensures you don't lose the inspiration, but it completely removes the guilt of not acting on it today.
And equally important is a flawless general reference filing system. If you have a piece of paper or a digital document that you might need later, filing it needs to be frictionless.
The rule of thumb is that if it takes you more than 60 seconds to create a new file folder and put the document in its proper place, your brain will rebel.
You will subconsciously decide it's too much work, and you will just drop the paper on the corner of your desk.
Over weeks, that corner becomes a stack, the stack becomes a pile, and the pile becomes a massive monument to your procrastination.
Having an intuitive, fast reference system, whether an alphabetical filing cabinet or a well-tagged digital drive, is what keeps your working surfaces clear of visual noise.
So once you have collected, processed, and organized everything into these trusted buckets and context lists, you have built the engine.
But an engine requires maintenance, which brings us to stage 4, review.
The review stage is where most people who try to get organized ultimately fail. You can build the most beautiful, color-coded system in the world, but if you don't review it, it dies.
You called the weekly review the master key to the whole methodology. And it is, because human lives are messy.
During the week, you will inevitably take shortcuts. You will write a phone number on a napkin. You will leave an email in your inbox because you are rushing to a meeting.
Your system will slowly degrade into entropy. The weekly review is a dedicated block of time, usually an hour or two at the end of the work week, designed to pull you out of the weeds and restore order.
If you skip it, your brain realizes the next actions lists are out of date. It stops trusting the external system, and it pulls the anxiety right back into your mental RAM.
Let's capture the exact feeling we're aiming for with the weekly review.
Okay, think about how you operate on the Thursday and Friday right before you leave for a massive 2-week vacation to somewhere remote where you won't have cell service.
Oh man, during those 48 hours, you become an absolute productivity machine. You are ruthless.
You clean the stacks off your desk. You finalize outstanding approvals. You aggressively renegotiate your agreements with your team. You walk over to your colleague and say, hey, I promised you that report by Tuesday, but I can't get to it until I'm back on the 14th. Is that okay?
You close the open loops. And when you finally walk out of the office on Friday afternoon, you experience this incredible, soaring, clear-headed high. You are completely present.
The weekly review is simply a structured habit of generating that exact pre-vacation clarity once a week. Every single week, instead of once a year.
The explicit goal of the weekly review is to get clean, clear, current, and complete.
You physically gather all the loose business cards and receipts. You process your stray meeting notes. You empty your head of any new commitments that crept up.
You review your past calendar for anything you forgot to follow up on, and you look at your future calendar to see what's coming.
You review every single active project to ensure it has at least one defined next action on a context list. You ensure the system is a 100% accurate reflection of your current reality.
So we've built the engine, and we are maintaining it with the weekly review. But all of this architecture exists to serve one highly specific, recurring moment in your life.
It is 3:22 p.m. on a random Wednesday. You just finished a meeting early, and you have an unexpected 45 minutes of free time. What do you actually do right now?
Do you stare at the wall? Do you doom scroll? Do you frantically open your email?
This is stage 5. Do. How do we trust our choices in the moment?
Deciding what to do with discretionary time is where people experience massive decision fatigue. The methodology offers a 4-criteria model to help you instinctively yet systematically filter your options so you can choose an action with confidence.
The first criterion is context. We talked about this with the lists. Where are you physically, and what tools do you have access to?
If you are sitting in the terminal at O'Hare Airport and the Wi-Fi is broken, you literally cannot execute the actions on your @computer list that require the company intranet.
Your context instantly eliminates a huge swath of possibilities, narrowing your focus.
The second criterion is time available. If you only have 10 minutes before you need to dial into a conference call, you are not going to start drafting a deeply researched, complex proposal.
Your brain knows you can't finish it, so you'll just stare at the screen. Instead, you filter your list for tasks that fit the window. You might knock out 3 short emails or make 1 quick phone call.
The third criterion is energy available, and this is where you have to be brutally honest with yourself.
It's 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. You have been in back-to-back meetings all day. You are cognitively depleted. Are you going to tackle the most analytically demanding task on your list?
No, if you try, you'll do a terrible job. You match the cognitive load of the task to your current battery level.
That 4:30 p.m. slot is perfect for low-energy tasks, like filing documents, cleaning out your email trash, or reading industry articles.
Conversely, if you are fresh and highly creative after your morning coffee, protect that time for high-energy, deep work.
And finally, after you have filtered your options through context, time, and energy, you arrive at the 4th criterion, priority.
Looking at the handful of actions that you can actually accomplish right now, in this location, with your current energy level, you ask, which of these will provide the highest payoff?
Which is the most important. You trust your intuition to make the final call.
It's incredibly systematic, but I know people will push back. This sounds amazing in a vacuum, but my days are never perfectly predictable.
Right. I can use the 4-criteria model to pick an action, and then my boss walks into my office and drops a crisis on my desk.
Yeah.
How do we balance the lists with the chaos of reality?
This brings us to the threefold model of daily work. The model acknowledges that every single workday consists of a constant juggling act between 3 distinct types of activities.
Type 1 is doing predefined work. This is executing the tasks you have already processed and placed on your next actions lists. You are working your system.
Type 2 is doing work as it shows up. These are the surprises, the ad hoc meetings, the emergencies, the boss walking in.
And type 3 is defining your work. This is the act of processing your inbox, clearing your in-tray, and breaking new inputs down into future actions.
The friction happens because we naturally want to do just one of those things. We want to put our heads down and just do predefined work, but then we feel guilty that our inbox is overflowing.
Or we spend all day putting out fires, doing work as it shows up, and realize we haven't advanced any of our long-term projects. We constantly have to negotiate between the 3.
But how do we know if our overall negotiation is successful? How do we evaluate if we are prioritizing the right projects in the grand scheme of our lives?
This is where the methodology introduces the altitude analogy, the 6-level model for reviewing your commitments.
The altitude model is a brilliant way to visualize how your granular daily tasks connect to your ultimate life trajectory. Let's start at the very bottom on the tarmac.
The runway level consists of your current actions. These are the hundreds of phone calls, emails, errands, and 2-minute tasks that make up the friction of daily existence.
Moving up slightly, you hit 10,000 feet. These are your current projects.
The 30 to 100 active short-term outcomes you've committed to achieving, like upgrade the home computer network, hire a new assistant, or finalize the Q3 marketing budget.
These projects generate the actions on the runway. Ascending to 20,000 feet brings you to your areas of responsibility.
These are the core roles you play that require continuous maintenance. At work, this might be staff management, strategic planning, or asset management.
At home, it encompasses your physical health, your finances, your marriage, your role as a parent. You don't ever finish these areas. Rather, these ongoing responsibilities generate the projects at 10,000 feet to keep everything balanced.
Up to 30,000 feet, we look at 1 to 2 year goals. Where do you want your company to be next year? Where do you want to be financially? What skills do you want to acquire?
At 40,000 feet, you evaluate your 3 to 5 year vision. These are major long-term strategies, significant career shifts, or major life transitions, like planning to transition from corporate life to starting your own consultancy.
And finally, in the stratosphere at 50,000 feet, life purpose. Why do you exist on this planet? What is the fundamental mission of your organization?
Now, here is where this methodology diverges sharply from almost every other management philosophy. Traditional self-help and corporate strategy dictate a top-down approach.
They insist you must start at 50,000 feet. You must define your ultimate life purpose and then let that philosophical clarity trickle down to dictate your 5-year vision, your projects, and finally, your daily actions.
But the reality of human cognition argues for a bottom-up approach. You have to clear the runway first.
Why? I've sat through so many seminars that say if you don't have a why, you're lost. Isn't purpose the absolute most important thing to figure out?
Philosophically, yes, purpose is paramount. But functionally, you cannot truly focus on a 50,000-foot view if your runway is littered with unmanaged, highly distracting debris.
If your mental RAM is entirely consumed by the low-level anxiety that your car desperately needs an oil change, that you haven't processed your emails in 2 weeks, and that you forgot to pay the electric bill.
You simply do not possess the cognitive bandwidth to sit back and envision your 5-year career trajectory. Every time you try to think about your life purpose, your brain interrupts to yell at you about the electric bill.
You have to gain control of the physical reality of the runway to unleash the psychological freedom required for higher altitude thinking.
That makes profound sense. You can't chart a course to the stars if your ship is currently sinking. You have to patch the holes first.
Okay, let's pivot slightly here. Everything we've discussed up to this point is what the framework calls horizontal control, managing a massive, diverse inventory of tasks across a wide spectrum of responsibilities.
But what happens when horizontal control isn't enough? What happens when you have one specific complex project that is just deeply, frustratingly stuck?
It requires intense vertical focus. How do we organically map out a complex project without getting bogged down?
To appreciate how we should plan vertically, we have to recognize how deeply unnatural our traditional planning models actually are. We are taught methods that actively work against the brain's natural cognitive pathways.
Oh man, this brings me right back to Mrs. Williams in my 4th grade English class. She traumatized a whole generation of writers.
I think you all had a Mrs. Williams.
We were taught that the proper way to write a book report or a research paper was to begin with a Roman numeral outline.
Oh, the absolute worst.
You sit down, stare at a blindingly blank piece of paper, write a Roman numeral I at the top, and then try to perfectly organize your thoughts sequentially. Your brain just freezes.
It is totally, completely unnatural to attempt to organize ideas before you have even generated the ideas. It violently stifles creativity.
I used to just write the entire report in a chaotic frenzy and then go back and build a Roman numeral outline afterward, just so I had something to hand in to please the teacher.
Your 4th grade rebellion was actually deeply aligned with cognitive science. But unfortunately, that unnatural top-down model carries over into adulthood.
Specifically in what we can call the reactive planning model, seen in so many corporate environments.
Right. What happens when an organization faces a new, complex project but lacks a natural planning framework? They ignore it until the deadline looms and it becomes an absolute crisis.
Then panic sets in. They throw too many people in a room. They frantically draw boxes and flowcharts on a whiteboard, constantly relabeling them, arguing over structure.
And inevitably, 3 hours in, a high-priced external consultant walks in, looks at the chaotic whiteboard, and asks the most basic question. What are we actually trying to accomplish here?
They start at the end. So if staring at a Roman numeral and panicking in a boardroom are the unnatural ways, what is the natural planning model?
The methodology uses a wonderfully relatable example that proves we all inherently know how to plan. Planning a Friday night dinner out with friends.
When you decide to organize a dinner out, your brain automatically, seamlessly executes 5 distinct phases of planning. You don't even notice you're doing it.
First, there's a purpose and urge. You are hungry, or you want to celebrate a promotion, or you just want to see your friends.
Second, you unconsciously establish principles. These are the boundaries. You know your friend Sarah is vegan, you don't want to spend more than $50, and you don't want to drive more than 20 minutes.
Third, you envision an outcome. You picture everyone sitting around a lively table at that new Italian place downtown, laughing over drinks.
Fourth, you brainstorm. Your mind rapidly fires off questions. Are they open tonight? Do they take reservations? Should we invite Mark? Is parking going to be a nightmare?
And finally, fifth, You organize those thoughts and define the next action. You pick up your phone to call the restaurant or check their reservation app.
It is brilliant because it proves we are all naturally brilliant planners. We orchestrate complex logistical operations in our personal lives effortlessly.
We just suddenly stop using that natural mental pathway the second a project involves a corporate budget, a spreadsheet, or a boardroom.
So let's break down those 5 phases of natural planning deliberately so we can wield them consciously when we're facing the hard stuff. Phase 1 is purpose, the why.
Asking why is the ultimate clarifying tool, yet it is astonishing how often professionals skip it. Defining the purpose establishes exactly what success looks like.
Critically, it creates your decision-making criteria. If you are told to build a new company website and you don't ask why, you might build a massive interactive portal.
But if the purpose is simply to have a digital business card so clients know we are legitimate, you know a single landing page is sufficient.
Knowing the purpose aligns resources, it motivates the team, and surprisingly, it actually expands your options for how to achieve the goal.
As the framework notes with profound simplicity, if you aren't sure why you're doing something, you can never do enough of it. You will just endlessly tinker.
If you aren't sure why you're doing something, you can never do enough of it. That is a quote to pin on the wall. Phase 2 of natural planning is principles, the boundaries.
I love the specific prompt used to define these. I would give the team absolutely free rein on this project as long as they finish the sentence.
As long as they stay under the $10,000 budget, as long as they don't compromise any client data, as long as it launches by October 1st.
Defining those non-negotiable parameters up front, before anyone does any work, prevents massive, tear-inducing stress later.
Once the boundaries are set, we move to phase 3, vision or outcome, the what. You have to create a crystal clear, highly specific picture in your mind of what wild success looks, sounds, and feels like.
This isn't just motivational fluff. There is profound neurology behind why establishing a clear vision is physically necessary for problem solving.
Yes. Let's talk about the reticular activating system, or the RAS. This is the bundle of nerves at the brainstem that acts as the gateway to your conscious awareness.
It is literally a biological search function and filter. The classic example is buying a car.
Right. If you decide you want to buy a specific red sports car, what happens the next day? You suddenly start seeing that exact red sports car everywhere on the highway.
Did 1,000 people buy the car overnight? No, they were always there. But previously, your brain filtered them out as irrelevant noise to save processing power.
When you planted the vision of the car in your mind, your RAS reprogrammed its filter to let that specific data in.
When you clearly, vividly envision the successful outcome of a project, you program your brain search function. You will subconsciously start spotting resources, ideas, and solutions in your daily environment that you would have otherwise completely ignored.
The vision programs the brain, which naturally triggers phase 4, brainstorming. Once you have a clear picture of the outcome, your brain recognizes the gap between your current reality and that future vision.
It instinctively starts trying to build a bridge across that gap. Ideas start popping up rapidly.
The crucial technique here is distributed cognition. You must get those ideas out of your short-term memory and onto a physical medium. You mind map on a whiteboard, you cluster sticky notes on a wall, you type a bulleted list.
You have to empty the RAM so the brain can generate more ideas without trying to hold on to the old ones.
And there is one absolute, unbreakable cardinal rule of brainstorming that people violate all the time. Do not judge, challenge, evaluate, or criticize the ideas as they come out.
Not your own ideas, and certainly not your team's. You are going for pure quantity, not quality.
If someone shouts out a wild idea, write it down. The moment you stop to critique an idea, you switch your brain from the creative, generative mode back into the analytical, critical mode. You pinch the hose, you shut down the flow.
The evaluation happens later, which brings us to phase 5, organizing and next actions. Once you have all the unjudged, brainstormed ideas visually represented in front of you, the human mind will naturally, inevitably start to see patterns.
You don't have to force it with a Roman numeral outline. You will organically group things by components, or sort them by chronological sequence, or stack them by priority. The structure emerges from the chaos.
And then, looking at this newly organized map of your complex project, you ask the ultimate ground-level question. What is the very next physical action required to move these moving parts forward?
You drill down from the lofty vision until you hit the pavement of physical reality. Who is doing what next? You assign it, or you put it on your own context list.
And here is the built-in diagnostic tool of the natural planning model. If the project is still nagging at your mind, if it is still generating anxiety and functioning as an open loop, it means you haven't finished the planning process.
You either need more clarity on the fundamental purpose, you need a more vivid vision, you need more brainstorming to break through a roadblock, or you simply haven't defined the actual next physical step clearly enough.
The anxiety is the signal that the planning is incomplete.
Wow, okay, let's take a deep breath. We have covered an immense paradigm-shifting amount of ground today.
We really have. We started by diagnosing the disease, recognizing the overwhelming edgeless nature of modern knowledge work, and acknowledging how old-school time management tools shatter under the pressure of a morphing reality.
We explored the antidote, achieving a mind like water by systematically capturing all our open loops and respecting the limits of our cognitive RAM.
We walked step by step through the workflow mastery, collecting 100% of our inputs into trusted buckets,
Processing them with the rigorous decision tree and the liberating 2-minute rule.
organizing the resulting actions onto context-specific lists and a sacred calendar, and keeping the entire ecosystem alive and trustworthy with the weekly review.
We discussed how to navigate the chaos of a Tuesday afternoon using the 4 criteria model, and why clearing the runway is essential before you can stare at the 50,000-foot view of your life purpose.
And finally, we looked at how to get vertically unstuck on complex projects by trusting our brain's natural planning model, moving organically from purpose and vision down through unjudged brainstorming to defined next actions.
Here is the most important thing for you to take away from this deep dive. You already possess all the fundamental skills you need to be insanely, frictionlessly productive.
It's true. You know how to make lists, you know how to brainstorm, you know how to ask why.
You just need to apply these inherent behaviors systematically, rather than reactively, to clear your mental RAM.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you step back into your day. We talked earlier about the flashlight analogy, how your brain expends its precious energy randomly reminding you to buy batteries when you are nowhere near a store, simply because it doesn't trust you to remember.
Right.
Consider the sheer volume of cognitive horsepower you are currently burning just to maintain your open loops. Imagine what your mind could actually create or invent or solve or experience if it wasn't spending 90% of its energy desperately trying to remember to buy flashlight batteries, call the dentist, and draft that memo.
Oh man, it's so true.
If you actually built this system, if you truly entirely emptied your head of every single internal commitment today, who would you be tomorrow?
Think about that invisible backpack of rocks we talked about at the very beginning. You don't have to carry it anymore.
The friction is optional.
You can set the backpack down. It's time to empty the rocks, clear the runway, and see exactly how high you can fly.